Hello viewers, good morning and welcome, and apologies for the slightly delayed start. Certain things happened and some of us were struggling in traffic to get here, but we're here. And I'm Adi Darame, and on the show this morning I have Mr. Mohamed Mbodj. Mr. Mbodj, once again you and I are here on this morning, and to do the newspapers we have Mr. Malik Carr, and people have taken, in fact we've taken to referring to ourselves as the three unwise men, or maybe wise men, I'm not sure which. Mr. Carr, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
And you're looking perplexed at that unwise men comment.
I love it.
And for any viewers who are watching, we've got a good packed menu for you today, as well as the African proverb. There's the newspaper review, and we've also got somebody coming to talk about the fisheries gender desk. What's that, I hear you ask? Don't panic, all will be revealed. And then the Nana cash distribution to communities in the North Bank region, we'll be talking about that. And that's the National Nutrition Agency, by the way. And then school for children with special needs. Again, something that gets neglected, and we don't often get to talk about it, but we'll be doing so on the program today. So first up, of course, as ever, the African proverb. I don't know where they get these from, honestly. This one says, a vision cannot be killed, it can only be neglected. And on the thing that was sent around with me, it had a picture of Thomas Sankara. There, viewers can see it on the screen. Thomas Sankara, Mr. Mbodj, a vision cannot be killed, it can only be neglected. Is that true?
Absolutely. And when I saw Thomas Sankara, and I thought, well, what's the clue there? I know that he once said something like, a soldier without an ideology. Would that be a substitute for the vision thing?
Right.
You know, the broader picture, the long-term thing. A soldier without an ideology, as it were, is a criminal. that sort of thing.
With a gun.
Yes. With a gun.
Yes.
So that is, you know, I put it in that connection. That was context. Why they had that there.
Yes.
But yes, it's a very curious one. Then you begin to wonder, wow, what is the vision thing? What exactly is a vision? You do see in companies they have vision and mission. What's the difference? Stuff like that. And if you neglect it for too long, would it need die? So all these questions start coming into play. But yes, ideas sort of perhaps cannot be killed. We just leave them aside, but sooner or later there might come a generation that pick it up.
Absolutely.
You realize that we've seen that in life.
You could be right. Mr. Carr, what's your take on it?
I think you have really nailed it, because the essence here is you can kill human beings physically, but the convictions, the ideals, the ideas, that you can never kill. And that we have witnessed in conflicts that are ongoing.
Absolutely.
In the global stage. You kill and kill and kill, but they grow and grow and grow with the same conviction, with the same beliefs. So therefore it's always good to come to negotiated settlements with certain conflicts, because if you try to impose and kill an ideology, it doesn't work. It never worked in history. And that is why they said the vision, especially if it is a vision that is carried by a people, you know, in terms of liberation, in terms of, you know, depending on how you use it, it doesn't die. It always lives amongst the people until their ambition is attained.
Well, as you rightly say, Malik, even in contemporary conflicts, we've seen that when they killed the leader of Hezbollah, the person who took over from him said, you know, the Israelis think they can kill our ideology. No, they've killed a human being. The ideology will transcend any human being, including our great leader. And so he said, you know, we will carry on. We will carry on the fight. So yes, you can kill people, but if there's an idea and an ideology, you cannot. But, and of course the big but is, you can't let it die. You can't let it go slack. Otherwise, if you neglect it, then you know, you can pay the consequences.
Yeah, because if you look at since the time of Marcus Garvey and all these people, the things that they were advocating for still is alive in many ways. It is the thing that inspires a lot of Pan-Africanists, inspired a lot of people to liberation. Then came Kwame Nkrumah, Du Bois, and the others.
So even people like Martin Luther King always quoted Garvey as
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can see that these are the seeds of ideology that when you sow, and people for obvious reasons of their survival or dignity, and they hold it as a torch and pass it from generation to generation. So if you decapitate, it doesn't mean that the ideology will cease to continue.
It will live on.
Absolutely, yes. The vision
Final
and the
word from you.
visionary.
Yes.
But I mean, what about the neglect?
The neglect,
Can I say that perhaps with us, the vision of independence, that was a vision.
Sure.
It was aspirational. There was a place that we wanted to go. Can we say that the vision of independence was neglected
Well,
along the way?
Well, I said
Something
final word to you,
happened.
but I'll come in with my own final word, because in the case of Cabo Verde and Guinea-Bissau, people have always said that in Cabo Verde they took on the vision of Amilcar Cabral, and in Guinea-Bissau they neglected it, and that's why the paths of those two countries are so divergent and so.
Yeah, but that does not mean to say there will not be a generation
who will pick it up
that
that's
can
it.
come again
and
with these,
revive it.
Yeah, and revive it, because they are still there.
Yeah, of
as
course.
you know, the
The ideas are there.
foundations. You know, so they don't normally die.
Okay, so let's leave that aside and let's delve into newspaper review. Otherwise, we won't get one. But let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have a newspaper review. Don't go away.
Have you been looking for the perfect indoor router with long-range Wi-Fi coverage and faster internet speed connecting all your smart devices? Well, we present to you the QCell Indoor Router, a router that has all you need and much more. For just $4,275, you can get 4G plus internet speed, wide coverage, and connect up to 15 devices. That's not all. The indoor router can be used for both office and home needs. So, enhance your internet experience with our indoor router. For more info, call our customer care on 111. QCell, Sunubus, we innovate, others follow.
Welcome back, and if you're just joining us at the moment, well, this is This Morning on QTV, and you've already missed the African proverb, so you'll have to go on YouTube and do a rewind. But don't despair, because we've now got a newspaper review. So I'll take first dibs. It's the Standard. It says, Amnesty calls for end to laws used to stifle freedom of expression in the Gambia. I think we all know where this one's coming from.
Yeah,
Gentlemen.
that we have to really blame the National Assembly members who should have put in the effort, you know, after the transition phase, you know, even though we didn't have the constitution, you know, replaced, the 1997 one, but they could have amended a lot of these laws.
They could have repealed many of them, to be fair. Yes. They could have repealed many of them.
Yeah,
right.
or even amend them to the extent that
quite.
it will serve, you know. But definitely the context upon which most of these laws were designed was meant to really stifle dissent.
Yeah, sure.
And that was deliberate, because we knew what happened, you know, after the consultative phase, when in 1992, when Yahya Jammeh came.
94.
94
when he came.
No, the consultation. Consultation
in
94, yeah, you're right. They
yeah.
took part in 94.
Yeah.
The consultation, after they took it and then went and changed a lot of things before they put it onto referendum. And then even after that, they started amending it again to suit their purpose.
That's right.
Then we were expecting, after the change, you know, that is what we fought for.
It will be one of the first things that will be dealt with, and yet here we are.
Yes, but they were not given priority, and that is disappointing. And then it's ongoing, almost a decade into, you know, the change, and we're still talking about amendments, constitution. It's definitely, you know.
Because Mr. Mboj, the fear has always been, if you don't amend or repeal, even though you say, oh, they're dormant, the temptation is you will use them one day. Yes. And that's why we're getting this call from Amnesty, isn't it?
Absolutely, because there we are not protected by law.
Yeah, quite.
which is not in the books.
Yeah, quite.
So it is simply what the discretion
Yes, yeah.
really
Yeah,
of the
quite.
president. That is no protection at all.
This is it.
So this is really the key. We were fearful that something like this might happen because the apologists would come and tell us, but look, we've not used it. When you look at all these indices on freedom of expression and all the rest of it, we're doing so well. We said, okay, fine, granted, but there's no protection. The thing is still there, and we've seen it sort of being used. Can you imagine being arrested for sedition, something like that?
Quite.
So this is really what the fear is. So we should treat this with urgency, that whether we have a new constitution or not, we can repeal certain things.
Absolutely. It's like when you go to a country and they say we have a moratorium on the death penalty. A moratorium just means that you've stopped. It doesn't mean you've abolished it.
Exactly.
You know,
I think Gambia is in that situation.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So unless you abolish it, then it's there,
Still
and
in
you
the
might
books,
use it one day. You know, and here we have this
can
call from
come to
Amnesty.
life,
So
you're
absolutely. Right. So I'll jump to another newspaper, Foroya, and their main story front page: Gambia ranked second highest for U.S. visa rejection in Africa.
It's rather unfortunate. We are such a small nation. Even the entire Gambia population, if we go to settle, we would hardly be, recognized, let alone. And I think it's really unfair. It's unfair that these nations would just stamp refusal upon our passports and at the same time confiscate the visa fees that you pay, which is quite substantial in terms of our earnings. So I think they should look into these things. I don't know whether it's the number of people that have visas and do not return.
It's usually based on with the Gambia. I mean, I think we have to be honest. It's based on a number of things. It's based on the number of people who take visas and don't return. It's the numbers who go to these countries by irregular means. Gambia, we always say, punches above its weight in so many things. And sad to say, a country of 2.4 million in whole of West Africa, when you have Nigeria, which has like 1,000 times this population of ours, and yet the number of people who land in Spain and Italy, Gambia almost has as many people as a country that's 1,000 times greater in population. So that disproportionate.
Does that have a correlation with the rate of refusal as well? If you're refusing me through the normal channels, then I have to look at alternatives.
How many are going through the normal channels? How many are even attempting to go through? Like 40,000 go. It's. I mean, I think we know where it's coming from. You say it's unfair, but I think we know what fuels it and why we have such a high refusal rate.
That's it, because your immediate question really will be here. I wonder, what are the criteria for rejecting that sort of thing? You've mentioned the idea of perhaps you have many more who go with the visa, then when the visa expires you overstay, and then that counts against your country, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And maybe with the other thing, like we're reasonably democratic. There is no conflict. I think they take these things into account, because you told me something about Cape Verde. Because of their nationals, they're always leaving.
They always leave. It's the only African country that has more of its citizens living outside than in it. It's the only.
So when it comes to visas, they're really doing very badly.
Quite exactly.
Isn't it?
And their passport is one of the ones where, because so many of them leave as well.
Yeah, but you have to understand the history of the Cape Verdeans as well. Most of them, their ancestors are white. They are very kind of mixed race people. So therefore they have connection with Portugal and so on.
No, the majority go to America, not to Portugal, funny enough. I mean, the majority go to America
they would have acquired, they would have acquired Portuguese documents. And
I mean, the reason they say that is because they are Cape Verdeans. It's not because they are dual citizens. It's because they are Cape Verdeans that so many of them, that's why their passport ranks quite low in terms of, the passports that can get you, because so many of them, almost every Cape Verdean.
It can be frustrating as well. They are bona fide applicants, Gambians.
Absolutely.
Well, I was about to say, I know somebody who has a very good job here, who just 2 weeks ago was refused a visa to America, and this is somebody who has I won't name the person, because it's somebody that everybody knows.
They have the same
and he was shocked
for UK as well. Somebody. Huge artist, performer, and these things are the frustrating aspect of it, because they're bona fide, applicants who have been vouched for and everything, and they yet still they make it very difficult for these people,
Yeah.
and that's frustrating.
Yeah.
But this is where our Foreign Affairs Ministry can take it up with them.
Well,
this is all about negotiations, discussions.
That's right. You know, why
this,
why is the rate
that,
so high
then
for the
how
Gambia?
exactly
Those are the
Gambia,
things that
sort
bring.
of thing.
But I don't know whether this is the kind of conversation that they bring up with the American embassy and the American government. You know, I doubt
Is
it,
it
but they should.
specifically to the American or overall?
For user,
or-
US visa,
US
rejection.
visa,
US
rejection.
visas, okay,
Rejection.
yes.
Second
So
highest.
second
I
highest.
think so,
I would be
yeah.
interested to see
They
how
ought to
Sierra
have
Leone.
conversation with
how
the
Sierra Leone
American
ranks on this
embassy
list.
to find out
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
You know, that's the case.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
I
we
think
are so insignificant in terms of numeracy. You know.
Yeah.
and
how how can we be second?
definitely.
You know, but you know, again, with Sierra Leone, I suspect Sierra Leone is close behind, or I don't know who's
Gambia.
first,
Yeah.
but they'll be close behind Gambia again because of, for similar reasons. The number of people who, you know, go and you know, there's stuff that we can't reveal, but
Absolutely.
you know, I know, you know, of people who went and yeah, they never came back,
Yeah, okay.
even though they
That-
went on,
that one
you know,
was-
visitor visa. But I think I
Okay.
might leave it there. Let's go back to. It says Gambia's again is from the Standard. Details of Gambia's national ID card contract plan emerge. And I'm not sure how that has emerged, but there's been a lot of debate about it.
That's been
because it's
ongoing. I
for
don't know what's
longest
happening
time.
with
So I don't know
regarding
what's the
to-
latest. Yeah,
I know the contract had expired.
Hasn't
of
it
the ones
expired-
that they
expired
sold.
this-
Yeah,
this
And
year?
they've been
This year.
talking about it
This
since,
year.
so I don't know.
That's
They
right.
ought to resolve that as soon as possible.
It's an important
it's
matter that needs to be
important,
resolved.
indeed.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
the urgency is there for them to act.
Yeah, sure. I mean, still on the Standard, it says research shows most UTG graduates don't work in their fields of study. That's not a surprise to me.
I know.
Because I've said it
Absolutely.
till people are probably bored of hearing me say it. Every time I've gone to the convocation and I hear 120 people graduate as lawyers or with law degrees,
Marketing.
or you know,
Business.
accountancy, you know, and so on. How many jobs are there? You know, how many lawyers can they? We're always talking about the laws, about the courts not being able to process cases. So it means that, you know, there's a shortage of lawyers around, and yet all these people, you know, they graduate with these degrees, and it's come up time and time again about you know, people are doing degrees that they're not going to get employment in the country. I'm not sure what the answer is.
See, that's it. For me, I linked it to something else
Mm.
because just before we came back from Britain, the talk there was really university graduates in the job market.
Yeah.
You do something completely unrelated to the
to
course
the
that you did
course,
at
yes.
university.
Yeah.
It seems as if it's the market, the modern market. For instance, when we returned here, I've studied journalism, but when I came back, I was in admin for a while.
Yeah, but
And
we
in that-
live in a
so
world
you
that
have
is,
that,
that is
don't you?
changing very fast,
yeah.
and you have to adapt.
Yeah.
You have to adapt your skills. You have to learn new skills, unlearn and relearn.
That's
You know,
exactly.
that's the new way of doing things. Just you come out of university, first degree, you have to adapt because the job market. You have to look at what is available, adjust yourself, retrain yourself, and fit into it.
And
So-
whenever I get a chance to go to either school or college and they ask me to go on their prize giving day and so on, I always ask them, I always ask the students, what would you like to be when you've left? And you know, some of them, you know, quite unrealistic things that, you know, they like to say. You know, people going into things like development studies, you know, they want to work for NGOs, maybe they might get a job at one of the UN agencies that are here. But, you know, those are finite, you know, they're not sort of infinite number. You know?
It's always good to have ambition and
Yeah,
where your heart desires and go
Correct.
there.
Yeah.
But you may end up being a square peg in a round
Yeah,
hole in
yeah.
many ways. But nonetheless, be somebody that is flexible enough to be able to retrain yourself and adapt to the needs of the job market. That is
Yeah.
how the world operates,
Yeah,
and that's
correct.
how it is.
And so I go back to, yes, next door in Senegal. It says Taku Walu Senegal coalition names former President Macky Sall as the head, and he's going to be leading their campaign in the
Yeah,
upcoming
the dynamics in Senegal
election.
are
It's
interesting.
very interesting
There is
indeed.
a change,
Yeah.
a shift in terms of power. But I mean, it's very interesting, very exciting times. In fact, this morning I was just reading out about Sheikh Yerim Sek, one of very famous, I think, journalist, also to
Okay.
speak, being detained, and also Bugan Dani Gai, who is also a very
Well-known.
outspoken
quite.
opposition member, who being called into questioning. So there is a lot of things happening towards the election, which is November, I think. So
November, yeah.
they're trying to form a grand coalition against
quite.
the Patriots.
That's
That
right.
is Usman
Pastef,
Sonko
yeah,
and co.
quite, yeah.
Usman and his team, they are going it alone. They're not forming any coalition with
this time.
anybody.
Yeah.
But these opposition parties, I mean, they are engaging to have a grand coalition. It's difficult, and I understand Macky is leading one.
Quite.
And also the mayor of Dakar, who
yes.
happens to be Bartolomé Diaz,
Yes.
is also leading
He's leading
another
another one.
faction.
Yeah, quite.
I mean, then you have the others. So it's exciting and interesting to observe.
It's the always thing with coalitions is that do we have a common enemy? And if so, can we put our differences aside? We saw it happen here in the Gambia.
Yes.
That's the only... Jammeh wasn't gotten rid of by a coup d'etat.
Yes.
It was to the ballot box.
Yes.
You know, is there a common enemy? Can we put our differences aside and come
Yes.
together and get rid of
Yes.
this?
The
But
status
it's-
quo
it's-
usually, especially in Africa, is very difficult
To shift.
to.
Yeah.
So that's the that's one method they have come to discover that you can use in order to really give yourself a chance.
Yes.
But sometimes it's very difficult to negotiate and create these coalitions
Because you're making
of the
deals.
ideological differences,
Quite.
the history of it, the distrust, and all these things. But in Senegal, for some reason, they are able to put everything aside and then come together. Some of these factions you could have not imagined it just about a couple of months ago. But that is the dynamics of politics, isn't it?
Absolutely. Talking about dynamism, look at Macky Sall's incarnations.
Quite.
Like Wad's protege.
Quite.
And then you went against him in Benno Boko Yaka. Now this is the latest incarnation. And he'll be leading it. Can you imagine that? He's not following anybody. He'll be leading it. So absolutely. So they really want to checkmate Pastef in the National Assembly.
Absolutely.
So it will make it so difficult, really, for your program to carry it through. Checkmate in the Assembly. It will be interesting.
Pastef have the momentum. I don't know whether the presidential will translate into National Assembly numbers. But if it does, then at least they can realize their program and implement it. If it doesn't, then it's going to be a huge challenge to them in terms of governance.
We have a lesson to teach them.
I was going to say...
Our presidential, look at our presidential elections, what happened, and then the National Assembly one. So the surprise that we got there. So it will be interesting to see what happens in Senegal.
Absolutely.
But the worrying trend is this arrest.
The arrest of journalists and so on.
Here in Seko, we don't know the details.
Quite.
Bugan, this morning as we speak, is going to answer questions, and there's at this critical juncture when the elections is just around the corner, it raises a red flag.
It really does, and because these are the sorts of things that when they were in opposition, they were very much against, and they used to raise objections too. So, and we've always said this, that when you're in opposition, as Mboj famously said, quoting, all you have to move is your mouth. But when you're in power, it's a whole different dynamic. There are certain things you have to deal with. And some of the things that you swore you would never do, you end up doing.
But they have to protect certain things because the optics might not be good, especially when it's around election time. You start picking your opposition, and saying this and that. Whatever the allegations are, you should be mindful for that particular period.
And we've seen some, there was this thing when about 3 or 4 weeks ago, Usman Sonko had said that they did not have to release the audited, accounts of the various ministries and departments. He said, yes, it was a tradition, but it's not law. But then last week he was forced to release them, because I think the pressure was building from the newspapers and saying, well, look, we've been doing it for 50 years.
I thought they had always insisted that they would release it.
He'd said quite, and it unfortunately for him, it created quite a kind of groundswell of opposition. Because why not? Because in fact, many people thought that it would reflect badly on Macky Sall. And so they thought that that would be a reason for him to, want to release her. But he was refusing. But
one good thing about Senegal, though, the democratic culture is already embedded.
It's there.
It's already have taken traction, and the gene is out of
It's
the
out of the
bottle. So
bottle,
there is
yeah.
no way that they could reverse it. The
Yeah.
voices of opposition will be there, and the challenges. So that makes a government held accountable, and they have to deliver.
Sure.
In democracy, if you have that, where people demand, they put the pressure on you in order to target the resources and also deliver. And that is why they are progressing and developing, as you can see.
We can see.
But
The
where you
evidence
don't
is there.
have that, the dormancy of opposition, then unfortunately they will not generate a lot
And
of...
Bo, do you want to come in, or do you want to give us something
No,
from Point?
Absolutely,
come in
but here
first.
as
Yes,
well,
yes.
they're learning on the job.
Yeah, of course.
That is inevitable.
Yeah, go
So they will sort of encounter
Your
all kinds of difficulties
Yeah.
as they go along. So they will learn to compromise.
yeah.
So we need to stick to the purity of your message.
Right.
It doesn't work in democratic politics because that's really the art of the compromise.
Yeah,
So they will learn to compromise and move on.
Yeah.
So these are
I
just
guess all of them
teething
do.
problems.
Wada, when he came,
Yeah.
he had to
Absolutely.
learn, but he did make a difference. But like we said, we hope everything would be okay and then transparent, and Senegalese voices would be respected.
We hope so. Mr.
That's
Bo,
it.
you
I've
have
got here the point, the main splash. Foreign Ministry prepares code of conduct for Gambian ambassadors.
I think we know where this
I
one
think
is
they've
coming
been
from.
having a lot of issues.
There's a
you
few
know, in terms
scandals
of- yeah.
in our embassies and high commissions around the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
But rather than a
we
code,
never had a code
I
of
was going to
conduct.
say,
rather
shouldn't there
than a
have been?
code, you have to look at people,
Yeah,
of
right.
integrity.
Are you choosing the right
Yeah,
people?
the way the
Yeah.
people that
Yeah.
you choose, you have to really
Yeah.
look at them, because they're going to represent the Gambia at the global stage.
Yeah.
So they have to be people of impeccable character.
This is it.
And that you have to be able to know by looking at their track record and what they have been doing. And, you know, that should advise you or inform you as to the people you deploy into missions.
This is it, because you know what we kind of found perplexing, certainly in Sierra Leone, when again had similar problems. We used to think that if you are a government, you would think, I would send the best of the best that I have to the most important, and these
Absolutely.
haven't changed pretty much. Washington, Beijing, London, Paris, maybe Brussels,
yeah.
where the EU. You know, I would choose the best people to go there, not the worst. But sometimes when you go to these places and you think, why did they send this person to such an important
Especially
mission?
Gambia, they've been sending like military
Yeah.
military guys to these missions.
So
and
it's a really curious one. So
yeah,
yes, as you
absolutely.
said, you know, we're having a code of conduct now, but we should have had that all along. But you rightly say, choose the right people, don't put square pegs in round holes. Really? Yeah.
Absolutely, and really, when you have the right people, sometimes it's as if you don't really need a code of conduct, you know,
they just do the right
they
thing.
just do the right
they
thing.
can just sign the code of
that
conduct,
sort
but
of
that doesn't
thing.
It doesn't mean
they
they're gonna
conduct
abide by
themselves in that way.
Yeah,
I don't
quite.
know what that means and
So it's
how
the
you can
people.
police that, because
Yeah.
if you have to have that, you have to have sanctions.
Of course.
And the sanctions would have been there in any case, even whereas you don't have any code of conduct. If somebody misbehaves or do something, you know, or
People
commit
can be
an
recalled
act,
because
they'll
they
be
bring in the
punished. So I
country.
don't know
to
what
distribute. It's happened in my
what the code
lifetime
of-
in the Gambia, where
yeah.
they've recalled people from London.
Yes.
One was a wife beater, and he
Yeah.
was recalled because there was a danger
Yes.
that, you know, they might even strip him of his diplomatic immunity so that he could have been prosecuted.
Absolutely.
But in the end, he was recalled.
And really, these positions, really, they used to be for people who've had years, perhaps 30 years of experience. You know, we know your character, as it were. We know what you have done.
We don't just
as it
give you this
were.
job because you're a
That's
party
it.
member
You are
or
a
you're a
party
supporter who's
member.
giving
See,
us
that
money.
network of patronage.
And
that
that's
is
why
really the
we're
canker.
having to
That
talk
is
about
the
it.
poison, as it were.
And that's why we have
to
to
these
talk about the
public
code of conduct.
officers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because, you know, yeah. So, yeah. that was it on the
Interesting
point.
one
Yes.
here. NHRC, National Human Rights Commission, observes International Day of Older Persons.
Which was yesterday.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
We
Yeah,
mentioned
I
it
think-
yesterday,
Yeah.
and they brought it up, and they put out a statement about it. And it was about dignity, aging with dignity, I think was the theme yesterday. We did a story on it on the news. And,
Time out. Older person, what's the lower threshold?
well, I did try and find out what it
That's
was. So I don't know whether it's above 50 or 60. I think it's
saw
above
one,
60.
one said 60, 60 and
60,
above.
yeah.
You're
So
considered an
50
old
now,
So
older
you guys
person.
don't count yet.
50.
Yeah.
So what I want to say is, yes, in Africa we are fortunate in many ways in our cultures, as opposed to the West, where they build institutions and institutionalize helping and assisting elderly people because of the structure of their family setups and settings. Here, you are within the community, you are looked after, even though we are very poor, but you're being taken care of up to the time you go to the grave.
But is that changing?
In the
West,
West,
is it changing?
The traditional culture,
because I see a lot
from modern imperatives.
It's still there. It might be changing, but it's still there because we don't have institutions to put them. So you have to be somewhere in a home anyway. And in the West, because they are having this family structure where it's just you
it's the nuclear
and your
family,
wife,
and that's it.
you
and
live together, grow together up to the point one of you pass away, the other one have to struggle. Here, even though, you know, we are very poor, you live within the community and then we take care of you. Even if you don't, people will come, pass by, check you. The way we interact, the way we relate, that's the difference. As opposed to there, where it's highly institutionalized. They will put you in an institution. Sometimes you don't even have visitors at all. You know, and because of the illnesses that comes along with aging, Alzheimer's, and then being forgetful also, dementia. These are attendant issues that tend to also aging in terms of your body, physically and all these things. So you need that support, and I think it's important.
And I think one of the things that the day, this was the 34th commemoration of it, I believe, globally. And I think the reason, one of the reasons they want is that old people sometimes are repositories of history. I remember when I first joined here, and I mentioned it the other day, one of the first things I wanted my team to do is I said, speak to the oldest member of your family who can remember the day Gambia gained its independence. What is their story? Record it, you know? And so these are some of the things, you know, and people don't do these things, and these things, they die with that old person. So it's not just about, oh, you know, respect them and so on. They actually, you can learn a lot from them in terms of family history and as well as the country's history.
Especially now with technology, modes of recording,
just
you can
press your mobile phone and record.
It's a lot easier now as opposed to then when it was oral history, and then oral history,
you can film them with your mobile.
From generation to generation until it gets distorted. But now there is more efficient ways of capturing, and books easier. Are there also, so the stories are being told. So it's interesting. That's why I was happy about your Kabu story last night. I'm like, this is interesting for the first time, and that was good.
Well, that's right, because, you know, these excavations happen, and they can be something that, you know, people learn from.
Definitely.
And they can
because
end up altering.
About Kabu and all these things, Kansala is just imaginary, but if you see concrete artifacts and relics of these people, how they lived, would then interpret their history, and it comes to live again.
I remember when I was doing 50th anniversary of Sierra Leone's independence, and I went to Portugal to do some research. I was absolutely blown away that in museums in Portugal, they've got ivory carvings the length of a tusk, like a really long tusk, that they got from Sierra Leone. But what was depicted on there were not Sierra Leonean scenes or anything. And then when you read it, it turns out that some of these sailors who would come with these ships would come with pictures of things like Jesus and the Virgin Mary and say to these people, can you carve me this thing? And then they would take it back, and people would just marvel at it. And when I put it in the book, people were like, what? You know, they were shocked. I mean, I had studied that history, and even I had not seen these things that they have in museums in Spain, in Portugal, in the Netherlands, that you know, these mainly Portuguese sailors had taken back. So as you said, the Kabu thing, some of what is revealed is now actually altering, because some of the stuff that was there were locally carved stuff, and there were also stuff that was obviously brought from Europe that they found in the excavations.
That's it. But you see, this is what we're finding out in the world of archaeology and all the rest of it. The idea of a kind of cultural purity doesn't exist. There's been always a mix mix, as it were. Some elements have always come from elsewhere. But again, when we think about the out of Africa hypothesis, then it makes sense. Everything was from here, it left, but it left with the vestiges. You know, these are the things that sort of evolved in a slightly different direction elsewhere. So in the end, it's just one human culture.
Civilization have always influenced, you know, you have the Eastern civilization influenced by, you know, what is happening in
You have
Syria,
the Greeks, the Romans, and they drew, because the empire was wide, they drew from things. So you take something like the banjo. Nowadays, people play the banjo. You go to American country music, it's like an instrument, and yet it's a West African instrument, even the name is from Yoruba. Banjo, you know. So, and yet most people playing the banjo don't even think that or even know that. You know?
But this is the key. As we are discovering this complexity of our heritage, now politically we are going into a more nationalistic mood. What an extraordinary contrast. The world of knowledge is finding out, discovering commonality, more commonality actually across the world, whereas politics, we are retreating into our bunkers. Around the world, immigration now is extraordinary.
Kind of philosophical ideology that has resurfaced of recent, especially, you know,
it's kind of resurfaced, I would say, rather than surface. It's kind of resurfaced.
But it has to be countered, because the wall is one wall. That's why if we destroy it environmentally, ultimately we'll all have to suffer for it. And we are witnessing the climate change and all these things impacting almost everybody. So it's a singular wall, regardless.
The rain doesn't fall on one man's door, as they say. So Mr. Mboj, any more from the point?
What have we here? Government committed to building strong public-private partnerships. What can I say? What can I say about that?
Go ahead.
KMC market mistrust provides evidence for what?
This was about a revenue collector who was questioned about overpayments being made. These are the things that are being revealed by the commission, which, you know, some people are still following. And you know, I keep saying I regret that I'm not following it as avidly as when we carried it on QTV, because there are still lots of revelations, some kind of hair curling revelations, if I had any hair to curl, that is. But yeah, I mean, it's just some quite amazing revelations emerging from that. And another one here, Foroya. It says vendors decry, newspapers love this word, decry continuous operation to clear the streets. I thought it had ended, but it's still in full force.
Yeah, because these people have to return back to their positions.
Because what they found is in many places that had been cleared, people have
they cannot police these things. It's not possible. You know, and, they have to find places. Like, for instance, this market, we've spoken about the market for many times in our programs.
The one that is
redundant,
unoccupied.
In the Sukuta towards Turntable. And that's a huge market. I don't know what they're waiting for, what the authorities are waiting for to make sure that all the vendors around Turntable are forced, even the drivers. There is a huge place there that they can use, and the structures are existing. So it's just the lack of leadership or decision making to make that place functional. I don't see any excuses or reasons.
We've heard all the excuses every time we've done the story.
Absolutely. You know,
I think
if the government is serious and want to take measures, it will happen. Just like that tomorrow. They just need to improve certain things there and then force everybody to go there, and everybody will start going there.
I think that the enforcement regime they have in place is flawed. I'm not sure whether you can have this central authority enforcing something like that
kind of all
over. It should be a local government.
But in this particular one, it's already existing. The state should take the lead and then make sure that all the vendors, the people selling fish, people selling, the market is not far from the junction. I can understand in other areas, maybe the difficulties. And Brikama also, I've been to Brikama. I was born in Brikama. I was ashamed, the Brikama area, Brikama is so dirty. The market is disgusting. And the roads there are appalling. I think they ought to do something. I don't know who is responsible. I know the argument goes to and fro between the government and the responsibilities are very clear. Certain things, you know, but cleanliness I mean, Birkama Area Council, for God, they can do better. They can initiate programs like KMC did in terms of acquiring vehicles from whoever they want to in order to, it's a huge municipality. They should even break it because it covers all the way up to Senegambia. And they cannot even handle Birkama. I don't know. Something ought to be done about that place.
And central agencies will always disappoint.
Well, this is it, but
This is
also
our
I think
experience.
the
the
people.
state and the council, they have to find a way of converging at some point to address those issues.
And I think
People
for
don't
the-
care all these politics about it. What we want is something that is very clean
Yeah.
and nice, and people, hygiene is important.
I think, and what people should do is, if they don't like, vote you out. I mean, I don't see people getting angry enough to do that, but that's what they need to do. You know, if the people
When
are
you
not
normalize
delivering,
all the wrong things.
well, this is it. You know,
Yeah.
we take,
So
we
you
take,
just take it for granted.
we take dysfunctionality
when
as
you
the
go
norm.
by and see
Yeah,
vendors
dysfunctionality
selling around
is the
these
norm.
dirty gutters, dirty
Yeah.
things around, that is why people get sick and, you know, with all sorts of kind of, you know, health issues.
So, Mr. Mboj, anything else?
What do we have here? Barrow meets UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres.
Yeah, saw them shaking
That-
hands.
yes.
Not sure what they discussed. Maybe they discussed Barrow's speech at the
I
at the
think
UN
being
General
the
Assembly.
OIC,
He's also
you
the
know,
OIC
Absolute
current chair.
have a lot to talk about with regard to
And of course, the OIC
peace,
have a
peace.
very big fish on their plate right now, which is, of course, the conflict in the Middle East. Because, of course, a lot of the OIC member states are Middle Eastern countries. And it will be interesting to see what stance they take
Exactly.
as the conflict
Yeah,
escalates.
But there's no unified front.
There isn't. There isn't.
So
Despite
they're
our
divided
size, yeah,
in
despite
many
our
ways.
size, we could do a lot. I remember when Jawara was the head, he did intervene in a lot of conflicts and was able to help resolve it. I think President Barrow
We've already
have
dealt
the
with it.
opportunity to
Yeah.
take the
Yeah.
lead here
Yeah.
and then make sure that do a lot of travels to work out,
Yeah.
negotiate peace conferences. I mean, it's got to be done because he is the
Yeah.
chair as we speak
Sure.
for
That's
the
right.
next 3 years.
And as you rightly say, that might be one of the things that he raises with the UN, because I think it could be the kind of concerted effort where the UN and the OIC,
yes,
these huge organizations,
Yes.
come together and say, is there, as
he can
Mboj
make a
said, there's
huge
no unified
impact,
front. We know that.
Mm.
And that's why, because yesterday somebody was asking in the office, why doesn't Saudi Arabia step in? When I said, well, you have a Shia country like Iran, and you have a Sunni one like Saudi Arabia.
They
They don't see eye to eye. So it's not that one's not going to come to the aid of the other, you know, when they're barely on speaking terms until recently. So it's only recently, last year, that they normalized diplomatic relations again. So, you know, those things matter. They don't see themselves as being really particularly on the same side. And yet they're both OIC member countries, of course.
And with this, let's call a spade a spade. Yeah? The UN General Assembly, that's just an annual ritual. Means nothing.
People go there, they blast Israel.
Look at over the years.
The Israel Prime Minister
it's a
comes, he
good
blasts
thing.
everybody.
Yeah, I mean,
They
and
have
then they do it again
registered
next
quite
year.
a good in many areas.
It's a talking shop.
intervention. Yeah.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
real power is elsewhere.
It's elsewhere, and we have UN agencies that are doing a lot of good work, including here in the Gambia. There are so many of them here.
Yeah.
But when we talk about the General Assembly itself, I mean, the criticism is that it has become a talking shop where people come and they kind of
Absolutely, yeah.
show off their prowess
Look at what's happening
and their
in Gaza.
articulacy.
That's
The
true.
whole world, everybody's, you know, facing
Eyes on
one,
quite.
one direction and
Quite.
one position.
Quite.
But again, the powers that be,
Quite.
few but so powerful, they're getting away with it.
And you have Gaza,
How
you
many
have all the
dead
noise
now?
around Gaza. You have Sudan.
You can, yeah.
I think only about 3 people mentioned Sudan in their speeches.
That's Sudan
And that
was
is a
going on
shocking
there. Exactly.
war that's going on there. You have
Unbelievable.
Ukraine, Russia, that of course got lots of mentions. But Sudan, which is probably as bad as any of the others, barely got a mention, apart from Sudanese, you know, Prime Minister Al-Burhan was there, and he of course mentioned. He
That's
couldn't
true.
not mention
That's
it.
true. But
Yeah.
Gaza is more complicated than Sudan.
Hey,
Sudan,
that's and
yes, the
even
displacement
longer
is
running.
higher. You
Yeah.
have more people displaced in Sudan than in Gaza, but the enclosure of Gaza and the
Yeah.
type of weapons that are being used as well makes it really, you know, a tragedy. You know,
Yeah, well,
it's
this
highly
is true.
tragic.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's there'll be another UN General Assembly next year, the 80th next year, and actually, I don't think anybody commemorated Gambia's admittance,
And then
which was in 21st of September, 1965.
Was it?
Well, I don't think it was commemorated here at all. I'm just as guilty because I actually have the film of it when the flag was raised for the first time, and we should have.
I think we
commemorated
did. We
it
did
actually.
last year in the
Yeah.
TV.
Yes, we did last
news,
year. We did
so
last year, but not this year. Yeah.
Too many issues on the
Yeah.
plate.
So, Mr. Carr, I think at this point
Mhm.
we have to thank you for joining us for the
Okay.
African Proverb and the newspaper review. As
Thank
ever,
you very much.
thank you for stepping
It's my
in.
pleasure as always.
And we'll take a break, and when after we come back, we'll have another very interesting matter to consider. A school for children with special needs. Join us after this break.
Introducing the all-new Q Mobile. Rediscover the essence of mobile communication with a device that brings you back to basics: quality, simplicity, and reliability. The Q Mobile is designed to fit seamlessly into your life, offering essential features without the fuss. 72-hour battery life, keeping you connected longer. Listen to news, prayers, or your favorite shows with the FM radio on Q Phone. A built-in torchlight, always ready when you need it, memory card slot for expandable storage, and dual SIM capability for flexibility and convenience. Why wait? Step into any of our care centers today and get your hands on the most affordable phone for just $600. Plus, enjoy a bonus package of 300 minutes talk time and 300 SMS spread over 3 months. Absolutely free. For more information, call our customer care on 111. QCell, Senior Boss. We innovate, others follow. Terms and conditions apply.
Atanong, oro mobile amen keso pura andere Q mobile. Mobile on no yade jamano. Tenon kadi no webi na fitora golmo. Tenon mojogi piji bui. Battery on ko balde tati. FM radio. Lampu. Memory card storage. Ko SIM card ɗiɗi o ƴettata ɓura andirede dual SIM. Dogu joni yaha ka customer care center ji amen. Soda oɗo mobile. Temeɗɗe jeego rek te a heɓay temed tati minitaji ɗi annduɗa a wowlay te non a heɓay kadi ko ɓura andrede temed tati SMS te a yoɓata hay hunde ɓe sendanama ɗum e nder lebbi tati si tawiɗa faalahin ko laaɓi noddu QCell customer care e 111 QCell suñu bos minen udditi laawol ngol si woɓɓe jokki ɗum no yaadi e sartaji.
Hello and welcome back. And if you've missed the first couple of segments, you've missed the African Proverb and you've missed the newspaper review. But of course, as ever on the program, it's a full menu. And next we have Doreen Jah, who's principal and CEO of, is it I Promise Learning and Development?
Yes,
Which actually caters for children with special needs.
correct.
Doreen, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for coming along. And before we kind of delve into the school itself and what you provide, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, just to give us some context?
Sure. So, I am originally from the U.S. I am an occupational therapist back in the U.S.
Mhm.
I did occupational therapy for about 8 years,
Right.
but prior to that, I've always worked in healthcare. So
Right.
for 15
Okay.
years, I've worked in nursing homes and things like that out of high school,
Mhm.
and just caring for adults, children, things like that. And I visited Africa
Right.
in Senegal about 5 years ago for the first time.
Okay,
For
right.
the first time.
Okay.
6 years ago, sorry, my boy is 6.
Right.
And I fell in love with it.
Okay.
And I hadn't known about Gambia. It was Senegal that I had visited.
Okay.
But there, while I was there visiting family, I had noticed the gap in healthcare.
Right.
And so I always said, if I went back, I would want to do these things.
So you noticed the gap in Senegal.
In Senegal.
Right. Okay.
So it was, but it was in geriatrics at the time.
Okay, right.
That's where I had been
Okay.
before I had been here. So I had noticed the things that were being done, but incorrectly
Right.
with the elderly there. So I had always said, if I did come, it would be to work in that area.
You should have been here for our earlier discussion about yesterday being the International Day for older persons. That was yesterday. Yeah, so geriatrics was your.
Well, next time you can invite me.
So that was Senegal. And how did the Gambia thing come about?
So I was in Senegal for about a month for my visit, went back home, and then it was just always in the back of my mind to come back.
Right.
But it was never the right time. And then COVID hit.
Right.
And I had lost my dad during COVID, so I said, we need to get away. I have 4 children, and I said, let's just go on vacation for a little bit, and we'll figure it out. So we packed up 4 children, 10 suitcases, and ended up in Senegal.
Okay.
And then we were there for about 3 months this time, and it's different to visit and then live. And we don't speak French, so the language barrier was difficult for us. And so then at the time, I heard Gambia, oh, they speak English there, the kids may like it. Plus, I'm not a city girl.
Okay.
I like,
countryside.
It's spread, yes.
Okay, right.
So then they said, it's more spread out in Gambia. So I said, let's go. We rented an Airbnb.
Okay.
And we're here for a month. And I've never left. And I've been here going on 4 years.
So the month has really stretched.
So a month stretched to 4 years, and I fell in love with Gambia.
Right.
And just everything about it. People were friendly. And so I started to get on the plan of how can I get into the healthcare system.
Okay.
And initially it was with elderly.
Right.
And I would visit hospitals and see the type of diagnosis that would come in and hear about the different things that was going on, go to home visits and things like that. But and then it was when I did my event business. I had a children's event business. I would do family fun days because of my children that I started to notice that the kids were in need.
Right.
And so then I would do birthday parties and I would say, this child is exhibiting this or that.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the parent knows. And so then I had a friend, and I always credit her. She was the director of the American School base.
Right.
And she introduced me here. She brought me out into pediatrics here in the Gambia. Because I always said, I have 4 children, I just would stick with adults.
Right.
And she said, please, when she heard of what I was, she knew what occupational therapy was.
Right. In fact,
no one had any idea.
I was going to pick you up on that because for the viewers, you hear people say OT, they kind of abbreviate it. So if you just explain what occupational therapy is exactly.
Yeah, so occupational therapy is it's a holistic approach in healthcare, and we just kind of address adults and children with disabilities, diagnosis, special needs, and just help them learn activities of daily living is what we call it. So you're dressing, you're feeding, your social-emotional skills, things like that. And we teach you how to take your disability and be able to function in everyday life with those things. So if someone's had a stroke, how to use that inability of your left or right side to then still be able to dress yourself with one side of use. And for children, if you have a diagnosis of autism or anything like that, how to develop skills to be able to communicate effectively without being verbal sometimes. So it's just taking the whole and teaching you how to just still function in the world and building independence. That's the biggest thing, is teaching you how to be independent with these delays or disabilities that you have. Yes.
Zambo, you want to come in?
Yeah, I wonder what has been the response of parents who, very likely don't quite know, as it were, what occupational therapy is and what benefits it might have. So what has been the response of parents of these children?
So in the beginning, it was difficult. As I said, I would go into schools because when the director of the American School first approached me, she asked me to visit some of the kids in her school to evaluate them.
Right.
And so I did, and then she would recommend me to parents that knew at first what it was. So parents that came from the US or abroad. And then I started to try to educate, but people still didn't quite get it. So when I would visit a school and a teacher would say, please, can you look at this child? Because I've been telling the parent that they're delayed in this or they're having trouble with this, and they just don't want to listen to it, or they want
So
they
how
don't
did
accept.
you get to choose which schools you went to? Did you have like a list of schools and you would contact them and say, I'm coming in?
No, so
right.
it was if I would get a phone call. So
Right.
if the woman from the American School would call
Right.
and tell me, I gave your contact to this parent,
Right.
they will call you. They would call. I would start seeing them at home, and then if they did go to a school, I would then contact their school and say, I'm working with them at home, can I now go and do a visit in school?
Sure.
So if they had sessions twice a week, I would do one at home, one in the school. So that brings me to what we want to do now is figuring out the schools, right?
Yeah.
So when I noticed that gap, I started to say, okay, geriatrics, they weren't really taking attention to what the services were, but parents, kids are always where it's at. Parents want their child to be better. They want them to do better. They will always invest in their children, right? So I said, maybe my focus should be then on the kids and helping the kids. They're the future. They're our generation, right? So I switched my gears to that. And I started to try to educate more on the services for children now. And in February of this year that just passed, I did a Autism and Disability Awareness Conference. So it was just kind of to just raise awareness overall on what autism was.
And who did you invite to that, and where was that held?
So I did it at Paradise, the Paradise Hotel.
I know
I literally planned it in 3 weeks. It was a last minute kind of thing. And I tried to invite as many people as I could.
Yeah, sure.
But in 3 weeks, it's kind of like they didn't know what I was. They didn't know, you know, the severity of it. People that said they would show up didn't show up. But I said, who's here is meant to be here at the time, right? And I had guest speakers there. I had parents speaking on how they realized their child had a disability or their experience with going to the hospital and doctors telling them they're crazy or there's nothing wrong with your child or, you know, things like that. And the stories I would hear from parents, it was very disheartening because to go to someone that you expect to give you answers and then be told the opposite. Parents would look to YouTube and diagnose their own children. So we had them speaking at the event, and it kind of raised awareness from there.
We've got some footage on the screen of some of the
so this is
that you Could you
so
just
we do
talk us
speech
through that one?
So in this one here we're working on speech. So if you were able to hear it, he had trouble with just saying. He was nonverbal is what we say, but he would have certain words that he could say, but never on command. If you say, what's this, he would never say it. So we started with letter sounds, and in the video we started with like p, and we'd do p exercises with how to form your mouth and make the sound, and then we would form the word pull and teach him with objects on how to do it. So you'd tell him and then he'd finish the word kind of. We do a lot of fine motor activities of them matching things together and stuff like that. So they have to coordinate the sticks with the colors on the cardboard. Alphabet blocks. Our little one was singing the alphabet there. So some of them can't have a conversation like this, but they know things, and it takes learning how to bring those tools out to then help them develop communication and things like that. We do non-communication boards and things like that.
So in terms of, you mentioned some people go to doctors and they get certain, what's been your interaction with the Ministry of Health or with some of the established hospitals, government hospitals? Has there been any?
So I haven't approached the Ministry of Health just yet. We're in the process of all of that. Hospitals, in the beginning, I would approach them for the geriatric side, and I kind of got pushback, just to be completely honest. I'd go in, even if I had parents that would call or family members and say, go see this family member. If I would go, of course, I'd ask, you know, I'm coming in to just assess them. Hospitals would tell the parent, call them and say, I'm making them feel incompetent. Instead of, and I would tell them, I'm just coming in to lend my support, teaching staff members how to transfer them properly or do things. As far as pediatrics with the children, I started at, I don't know if you know of Innovarix. I did a consultation with them and their doctors that would see the pediatric clients they had. And I would just tell them what it was that I did and the service I can provide. Once they knew that understanding, they started to refer their clients then. There's a woman here that works with children with this. Parents would call, then we'd do a consultation, and that's kind of how it was. But it's been very difficult for me to get people on board. I think it's the lack of understanding
I was
really
gonna
in
say, why am I
education.
not surprised? But it is. I think, and you've nailed it in that last comment there. It's a lack of understanding.
Right.
Because I think something like this, people watching will get a better understanding of it.
Right.
And I think, oh, okay, yeah, that's the lady we turned away. Maybe we shouldn't have done so.
Right.
Because really, I think once you give it a context and people can see and hear what it is, because sometimes they don't even give you the chance to explain, and they'll say, no, go away. You know,
Or once
and
they
that's-
hear
yeah.
disability,
Yeah.
they think is something that it's not. I always say disability doesn't mean they can't do things. I have parents that they're not ready to accept that their child is different.
Because here you have people using the term, and I think sometimes it's become a kind of empty phrase. Disability is not
Right.
inability.
Right.
But that is the truth. It is not inability.
It's not.
You know, and I think, you know, people need to get a grip of that and understand
understand
that.
it.
Yeah, rather than
That's-
just say it as a sort of empty phrase. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we try to build on is teaching these kids and their families that just because they have this inability or disability, it doesn't make them any less than the rest of us.
Yeah, quite.
Their kids with autism
Go.
are smarter than us. Yes, you see. And we do a lot of our things to play. So our little one here, he has cerebral palsy, so his grip strength is very
Right,
weak.
yeah.
So just teaching him how to use tools to just strengthen those things, to be able to then pick things up, you know, walking.
Sure.
He has a weak side, just being able to walk around and be comfortable and not someone carrying him and things like that. Encouraging them to push this independence.
Sure.
Don't dress them because it takes them too long to do it. Don't do it because you feel like they can't do it. Give them time. It's patience. Patience is a big thing here. A lot of parents don't have the patience and they rush it. And I want them to be better now. Even when they come to me, it's like, can you have them talk tomorrow or next week? And I said, there's no timeline.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's on them. You
Sure.
know, it's just patience and love and care and nurturing them. And that's what it is.
So is there a team that you work with, people that you are training to kind of acquire these skills that are they're absent here, let's be
Yes,
honest.
definitely. So I started with a team of 2 girls that had background in daycare.
Yeah. Right.
And I kind of had to wipe that background because it's different working with special needs and just teach them. And it's been a tough road
Right.
to teach people
We
and have them retain.
You're talking to 2 people who understand.
It's not
So-
easy, and you have to learn their teaching style because not everyone learns the same.
They're quite-
So I say back home, we're taught like robots,
Independent.
right? To study and
Yeah.
and you have an exam, you do this, you memorize it and things like that. Here, some of them don't know the terminology.
Yeah, quite.
So having to teach it, but then bring it down to their level and then explain it
Sure.
and then use examples. So teaching takes 5 times longer than it would just for someone who's educated in it. So, but it's been wonderful to open their eyes to something different.
So one of the reasons I asked about the team is that one of the things that you find here, particularly with you're dealing with children with special needs, some of them might only speak a local language, Mandinka, Wolof, Fula, whatever.
Yes.
Amongst your team, that would help. And are you also being forced, shall I say, to learn?
So my Wolof
all
is,
of the above.
My Wolof is very
Limited.
duty.
Okay.
I try to learn things,
Sure.
but the team,
Sure.
I have team members that speak almost all the languages,
quite,
which
yeah.
is nice because then if I have to have them come and translate.
Many people here are multilingual.
Yes,
you'll
which
find.
it's beautiful
Yeah.
because then I'll just call them over and say, can you know, interpret this or that, and then they're able to then do that.
Right.
This way then there's no barrier on
course.
getting the services for the child.
Okay. Butch?
Yes, just one last question though.
Yes.
I would love to know, from your interaction with students and going to all these schools, how prevalent is it? Because it's to some of us who really do not have much understanding about OT, these disabilities could be invisible. So when you have an expert such as yourself and you look around and did you think, ooh, there's more of it than I thought, or less? How
No,
prevalent?
definitely. When I first came, I didn't see much of it. But when I was doing the events and going to the schools, I started to notice more and more.
Right.
Now, after even putting out the service a bit, I realized the reason why I wasn't seeing it as much too is a lot of these kids are kept away.
Well, in fact, I'm glad you said that, because when Mboj asked,
It's hard for me to
was
say it, though, because
that's
then
what
they're
I
like
was
this
going to
thing.
say. Yes, absolute 100%.
Yeah.
100%. They kept
No,
away. Yeah.
That's what happens, and this is just parents themselves admitting to these things. I partnered with an organization called Caring for Mobilities.
Right.
They are amazing. They provide mobility aids, wheelchairs, walkers, braces
Right.
to children and adults in underdeveloped areas. They go around to villages. And when I would hear some of the stories of what they would see visiting these villages, children with cerebral palsy, locked in rooms, because they think that they have jinns, if I can say. They think they have jinns, and they don't want their other family members to catch it. And I say, these neurological disorders are not contagious. You can catch it, but the mistreatment of kids, and even with the kids with autism, parents would come, and the first thing I would ask, if they have a meltdown and they get upset and angry, how do you react?
True.
Well, I beat them. And I say, well, you can't beat them.
go ahead.
You can't do that. It's not going to help them. And I know parents, I empathize with parents, because it's not easy spending a full day with a child with a disability, especially some kids on the spectrum. We call it autism spectrum disorder. There's a whole spectrum of it. So they can be one of us can have autism and we may not know, because there's high functioning autism out there.
That's right.
There can be the ones that are low functioning that you can see them jumping all over the place and having a tantrum and biting and kicking and screaming. They can't speak, they stim a lot. But everyone doesn't look like that. So having people understand that, but everyone that doesn't do that is not autistic either. So just teaching them and educating them that you can't just diagnose everyone. You have to give them an appropriate assessment, right? And really spend time. Even me, when I do an evaluation with children, it's not a one day. You don't bring your child and I say, okay, after 10 minutes they have autism. Sometimes I can say they exhibit signs of autism, but other times it takes some time of me doing activities with them to get to know what their delay is, right? And not every child that behaves a certain way has these things. Maybe they just didn't have the experience other children had.
Right.
Maybe they're just delayed in certain things. You don't automatically put a label on them, because you say, on Google says that if they are jumping up and down, they're autistic,
that's one
right?
of the most dangerous
Yes.
things. People go online and think,
they
what
diagnose
does
their
this mean?
kids.
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
So I think even with the school, so I can say I started a center after the conference. The center was just at a gym, Vibes Fitness Gym, in their squash room. And it was an outpatient one-to-one care center.
Sure.
And they would come twice a week for an hour, and I'd work with them, develop an individualized plan for them, do school observations. That's how this business kind of started.
Sure.
And I just did a 7-week summer camp. And I can tell you, it was an inclusive summer camp. All children were invited.
Sure.
But 80% of the kids that showed up were special needs kids.
Sure. And in case anybody outside of the Gambia is watching, summer is our rain season here.
Oh, yes.
But
Yes,
Doreen,
rain season.
So in closing, could I just ask, I guess because of resources, you are constrained as to the service you can provide in terms of geographic area, but this is obviously something that is probably a nationwide. So if you had an ambition, a dream, and you could foresee yourself 5 years from now, because you came here for a month, you've already done 4 years.
Yes.
If you could project forward 5 years, where would you like to see this work going kind of nationwide?
Oh, I would love to grow it here. Our school went from the center, and in 6 months we just opened our school.
Right.
So our school is separate than the center.
Right.
And we plan to offer services not just in our school, but in other schools. So we want to be able to go into schools and put a trained person there to provide services there. We would love to build our school to be able to accept all of these children that are turned away. A lot of our children are turned away from mainstream schools because they're not equipped to work with them.
Sure.
We don't turn them away. But we want to be able to accept all of them, train them. Some of them will be able to be put back into mainstream schools. That's the idea. Some of them can. Some of them will never be able to function. But our dream is to get our school up and fully functional. Right now, if we are at full capacity, we would be able to service 80 children in the compound we
in terms
have.
of numbers,
And that's just for now in our first location, but we hope to be able to service hundreds because our school is the first of its kind here in the Gambia. And then we hope to be able to expand it out to other countries around, right? And just start to educate. We plan to continue our conferences once a year. We would love to create even sponsorship programs, because the first thing a lot of people say is, well, a lot of kids that need the services are underprivileged kids. And I say, that's true, but it's not true, because privileged, or those who can afford a service, they're autistic too, or they have disabilities too. It's not based on your economic right.
situation.
And so I try to, but we're not just there for those that can afford us.
Sure.
Right now we do charity with organizations like Caring for Mobilities, where we'll do a reduced rate for their clients that they bring in. They provide transport for them to get to us. But if we gave every spot to someone underprivileged, we would never be able to grow, right? So if we can get the support and the recognition out there and have people being able to sponsor these kids, of course we have a spot for them, right? We want to be able to service all children. There's no set, oh, you can afford us, so only you can come. I get parents that say they think they can throw money, oh, come to my house, I don't want people to know. And I say a child that can afford you and a child that can't, we treat them the same. They're all the same, but they have individual needs, right? So it doesn't matter what you can and can't afford. So we hope to be able to grow it and expand it all over.
Thank you, Doreen Jah.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming on the program. And Mr. Ambrose, thank you for being here. And to our viewers, thank you for watching. And if you've been excited and interested in what Doreen has been talking about, then get in touch with us here at QTV. Easiest one, you probably email us, news@qtv.gm, and we can always pass on the details. Once again, thank you for watching. Join us again tomorrow for another edition of This Morning. Goodbye.